name is David Whale. I'm Whaley Geek on Twitter, and this is the Raspberry Jam panel. So I have my little flashcards with me to prompt me what I'm supposed to be doing. The Raspberry Pi on the front. So I'm Whaley Geek. This is the Jam panel. Right, I wonder if each of you could just introduce yourself. Just say who you are, if you've got a Twitter handle, what jam you run, and then we'll start the session off. So,
I'm Michael Horne, Twitter handle is Recantha. I'm co-organiser of Cambridge Raspberry Jam with Tim.
I'm Tim. Geeky Tim's my Twitter handle. I'm a performance architect, but I run the Cambridge Jam with Mike.
I'm Ben Nuttall. My Twitter username is _.join, first name, comma, surname. And yeah, I work for the Raspberry Pi Foundation. I started the Manchester Raspberry Jam, which I've now passed on to this guy who's taking notes now.
So I'm William Bell. I've done the CERN Raspberry Pi Jam. My Twitter handle, I don't use it very much, I must say, is William H. Bell.
okay, thanks so much. Can I just ask the audience, so how many of you have been to a jam? Your hands up if you've been to a Raspberry Jam. Okay, so this guy here, which is Timothy Gibbon, could you just explain what a typical jam looks like? What was the last Raspberry Jam you went to?
Some talks and some hacking sessions.
Okay. And can I ask again, anyone, I'll ask this question at the end, how many of you think that you might run a jam in the future? Okay, that's good. Let's see if we can get even more hands up by the end. So, this is a panel session, so really it's to ask the panel questions. I just wanted to kick off with one question, and then we're going to have a quick chat about that, and then open to the audience for questions. If you don't have any questions to ask, I've got plenty in my little book here. So my first question is to the panel, and I'm sure I can join in as well, is what made you run your first Raspberry Jam? Why did you do it?
That's a question we all ask ourselves. Why did I do it? Personally, I went to the Milton Keynes Raspberry Jam, and it suddenly occurred to me that there wasn't one in Cambridge at the time. There'd been two a few months before, but they hadn't carried on. And Cambridge is fairly close to me. It's the home of the Pi. It seemed logical that there should be one.
I went along to the first couple of jams that Mike ran at the beginning of 2013, and helped out just moving things around, that sort of thing, because we live in the same town. And thought for the third jam that actually we could do more if Mike had some help. So since we do live in the same town, it was easy for us to meet, and we got together, threw a few ideas. September Jam came along and was massive success, I believe.
Yeah,
we felt it was. We're now on just planning Can Jam 6 coming up in May. So
wow, that's excellent. And Ben, so you...
So I came from a culture of user groups. So I was used to there being groups that met to talk about a particular technology or to use that particular technology. As I'm sure Daly is aware as well. We both go to, well, when we were both living in Manchester, we went to all of them between us. So it was a sort of natural step for me when the Raspberry Pi came out. I went to the the local community space and said, is there going to be a Raspberry Pi user group? Because I'd like to go to it. And the more I asked them, the more they said, well, why don't you just run one? So I did that, and the Manchester Jam was born, and we ran it monthly, and sort of evolved the idea from there.
In my case, so I live in France, and in France the situation with respect to Britain is far worse, and there is no CAS. There is French it would be called informatique à l'école, but there isn't such a thing. We have TICE, which are people who do computing counseling. Basically, it's conseiller in French, But the problem I have is, well, I have blessing. So I have 3 little boys, and they receive almost no useful computing input at all from school. So it was evident that something had to be done, and there was very little in French at all. So we tried to run we ran several days at CERN. But CERN, because the jam doesn't work as a pun in French, we call it journée, which is a day of Raspberry Pi. And the last one was really big. I mean, we had something like 130 people come. Somebody from Google came to speak. So we had teachers as well. The problem for us is a big outreach. So we've got to find teachers. I mean, there are people who can really program well. But our children, they go to French-speaking schools and they can't program. It's the same sort of problem as British schools. In fact, the French government has woken up this past year. But yeah, it was really an outreach because the French media has only covered the Raspberry Pi once, and that was just to say how much of a failure it was, the initial release. That's all. Nothing else in the mainstream media. So it's really, I mean, you're just starting from almost nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've had a lot of success, but we really need that to carry on with different groups and spread. Otherwise, yeah. I was at a teaching meeting once, and a teacher came up and said, "It's that Raspberry Pi." You know, he'd heard of it, but it was a novelty. He'd never seen one before.
Excellent. So there was a couple of people in the audience who put up hands saying that they were either going to or thinking of running a Raspberry Jam. Can you put your hands up again, please? Okay. Now I know that you're going to essentially taking over from Ben. Okay. What's your name, please?
Oh, hi, Helen.
Helen. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
And what is it that's motivating you to set up the Raspberry Jam or think about setting up the Raspberry Jam?
Well, me and my partner just love the Raspberry Pi, and we're really keen to get more people into coding and kind of connect it with a lot of design and craft. And we've been working a lot with Fab Lab Airedale, who, although they've been going for 18 months now, hardly anyone knows it's there, because they've concentrated more on commercial work. And so we've just delivered a programming with Pi course there, which went really well. But we were kind of suggesting, look, I think if you want to build up a community of people, if you want to get the local people involved in coming here, maybe we should run a jam. So that is what we're hoping to do in Keighley, which is quite, there's a lot of poorer families, so I'm kind of looking for advice to how to kind of get this going successfully with that kind of economics in mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So any advice would be really great.
Okay, so Michael and Tim in particular, so how many jams do you run now?
We've run 5. Well, I've been
yeah.
involved in 3, Mike's 5, so we're coming up for our 6th now.
Okay, and Ben, how many
I
do you
ran 16.
16, oh wow.
And Jack's run 2 since I
Yeah.
left Manchester.
Okay,
So
and
they're on 18.
wow, and
So
William?
4.
4, okay.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for the panel, just linking to what Helen said. So this whole community thing. So I run one Raspberry Jam, and then I got busy and everything else. And actually, what I now do is go and help out other Raspberry Jams because it seems a more sensible use of my time. But I just wanted to ask you guys that have done it like 16 times and 9 times or whatever it is. Are you seeing that community? So are you seeing different people coming every time, or are you seeing the same people, or a mix of both?
We get a mixture. We have a few stalwarts, but because we have a jam that's sort of 200 people, and we always sell out quite quickly. So it's a lottery really as to whether or not you get a ticket. But we do, because of that, we do get a fair few people who we haven't had before. They kind of make it in a way because it means new people to talk to.
Yeah, it is one of the problems that, well, not problems, that people come back again and again, but it's because we are limited on space, we're limited to about 200 people. It's getting new people along. That's not going to be a problem for you. It's letting people know about it, and I really don't think it matters that people maybe can't afford their own pies. or at least not at first, because we have a lot of people coming along. We run workshops, children's workshops at ours, and some of them have pies, some of the parents have pies and the kids haven't really played with it yet, or they've got them and they don't know what to do with, but a lot don't, and they just want to get their hands on them and play with them and program them, and that I don't think will really be a problem for you. What we do have advantage of is we've sponsored we've got 20 pies that we now run these workshops with, and so that's sort of getting that kit together didn't cost us anything, but we got sponsorship for it, and that's I think it's likely to be the issue there. If you want people to come in to use them, the children to come in especially to use them.
So have a kind of starter pack, as it were, just some there, and then hopefully
Yeah.
people get it.
Yeah, we were fortunate, got some donated by Raspberry Pi Foundation, some by the company I work for, some by another company. We went to Poundland and bought the mice and the boxes that we've got them in. Each of them comes in a plastic box with everything in there for a workstation, the power supply, the mouse, a short extension lead, you name it. It's all in there to carry around with each monitor. We were fortunate we ran a few jams, so we had a little bit of a float to be able to pay for a few of the extra bits, like the mice and that sort of thing. But yeah, start small and grow. Assuming you have people paying for admission, which we think is good, because you then get people investing in coming along. Often, if you don't charge and you are limited on space, then you get 10-20% not turn up, and that's 10-20% of people. For us, that's sort of 20 or 40 people who could have come, they didn't, and that's where we get that float for to buy this equipment.
What do you tend to charge then?
It's £2.50 was the last one.
Yeah.
So it's not a massive amount, but it's
But we get our venue free. I should say we do get the
yes,
venue free.
that makes a big
Really
difference.
does help, yeah. So it's an interesting point, just before we move on to other guys there. So I did one jam at Harlow, and for me it was, having been to another Raspberry Jam, I had an idea of, well, actually I want to use some of that format, but I want to do something different. And I just did a fairly free format jam in the end, and Mike, you came along to my jam, didn't you? And the problem that I battled with was whether to charge or whether not to. And Peter Onion, who at that time ran the Milton Keynes Jam, didn't charge for it. It was just an Eventbrite booking, so I'll try that and see how it goes. And it sort of worked, but we had some panics right at the last moment. So we had this idea of 50 people, 50 attendees in our mind. We had to try to get the balance right between people that were showing things and people that come to find out about it. And right at the last minute, we had someone book up for 10 tickets. And I thought, wow, 10 tickets. Now, do I fall off my chair and get really excited about that? Or is it someone over in Russia that's just pressed the buy button because it's so easy to, and it's free? And I wasn't sure. So we actually managed to get in contact with the person and said, really, really nice that you've booked 10 tickets, just making sure, you are a real person, and you really do want all those 10 tickets. And as it turned out, it was a lady who was part of a home education group, and she brought herself and 9 children along, so it was fantastic. But there was that panic moment. I think the point you were saying about if you charge, then even if it's just a little bit, it's a commitment that someone says, well, actually, even if it's only £2, I've made that commitment to you that I've gone through that process of actually buying. How did you guys find the whole charge, don't charge thing?
So the space I was using, they didn't charge us as such, but I donated. But they do have room hire, and they do kind of, they needed the. They can't just be taken from. You need to kind of balance things. So I just came up with a price, and sort of £3 or £5. Newcomers were a bit cheaper, and children were free. Kind of added up all of that and just donated that to them as an amount. So it would be kind of, on average, it would be a reasonable amount to as hire.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So
with you,
that
yeah.
kind of,
yeah.
they never requested anything, but it was
Yeah.
just something but we ought to
Have you
do.
got sponsorship for your Raspberry Jams? You got people that sponsored?
So I gave all the ticket money to the event, to the space, and I collected sponsorship separately on a donation basis, and some of it was just, you know, a keen attendee who wanted to chip in a bit more. Some of it was actually companies saying, you know, yeah, it'd be great if you could stick my logo on the slides or something.
Okay.
And then all of that sponsorship money went towards food for the day. So we provided food for our attendees. It's you know, a bit more difficult to do that on for free on your scale. But yeah, for 40, 50, 60 people, you know, you can manage that.
Is that the same for the Cambridge Jam? Do you get sponsorship, or is it just that you get free accommodation?
I should say actually we don't charge for kids.
Yeah,
16 and under, we don't
by
charge.
the way. But no, we don't take sponsorship for advertising or anything. The vendors who come along, we don't charge them to come along because they're part of what makes the jam. Yeah, there's other ways we could
Do you
get
charge
money
the
out of it.
people that are bringing their wares to sell?
No.
No, so all the money you get is £2.50 times 200.
£2.50 times the adults. Yep.
Yeah,
Just the adults,
probably-
yeah, minus the Eventbrite fees.
Oh yes, now that's one to watch out for. Okay, so actually I think pretty much everybody that runs a jam uses Eventbrite. Do you use Eventbrite?
Yes.
You do, yeah. So do you want to talk us through
Yeah, so
Eventbrite?
Eventbrite. Okay, the reason I use Eventbrite is because it is actually properly in French, in the French version. But the other software we have is not really all in French. So, yeah, we don't charge because we're not allowed to. The Swiss and French law is very difficult if you're a small business, and you get into big trouble if you charge, so we can't. The space that we've used has been free, so we haven't had to pay anything for the space. In fact, there was another group who was doing something similar, not Raspberry Pi based, but programming with children, and they were given another free space in industry. So there are a few free venues that are available. With vendors of hardware, the last time, well, in fact, a couple of times, our local contact from Farnell has come. That's been really helpful. And the last time she came bringing starter kits, and she was selling them like hotcakes, and they're really going. The annoying thing is she didn't bring the price list for euros. So she had the Swiss franc price list, but not the euro price list. So all these people coming from France, because the event was just over the border, couldn't buy them because they hadn't got their Swiss francs. Anyway, hopefully we won't do that again. But that was really good that they could do something with the tutorial session. They could then go and buy the kit and go and play with it at home. Because you take away the barrier of having to order something online because they already have it in their hands. So. And we don't charge them because, in our case, we use Farnell as one of our component supplies, so we have a contact for CERN. So yeah, but really we weren't biased. It was just easy to invite her, and she could then sell stuff.
So do you have any costs that you have to?
Well,
you don't have to hire the venue. Is there anything that costs you any money?
Yeah, there is stuff that costs us money. Is actually the hardware. So. We bought, between us, the people who are involved in the jam, we bought up Raspberry Pis. So between us we have some number of Raspberry Pis. But the problem for us, more than anything, although it might seem silly, is monitors. Yes. So we can populate, I mean, imagine we have a tutorial room that can hold 60 or 70 Raspberry Pi setups. But at the moment we don't have that much money, and because of the way that the organisation works, even if somebody gave us money, we're not allowed to accept it for legal reasons.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's totally bizarre.
Wow.
So
They buy you some monitors.
well, yeah, I think next time round, thankfully, there is going to be a monitor solution, but it's going to be involving some other Swiss company who's just going to lend them to us, and then we'll have to give it back. So we've got vast oodles of space, network's great, but it's monitors that's the pain in the neck. And we have to take down the room as well. So you have to put all the stuff out. So normally I do this late at night when there's nobody in, and just put all the monitors out, cable it. So with wires, right, network cabling, and then it all has to go away again because the room's used normally for students with laptops.
And do you get enough sort of get in and get out time, or is it quite stressed as to?
It's pretty
half an hour to
stressed.
do it?
I think the big overhead of running a jam, one big overhead is the advertisement. Because, as I said, the French media don't do us any favours. What we've done in the past is we've distributed, say, 1,000 flyers to schools in the local area, something like that. And we've also gone through all the various news groups, Linux news groups, all the contacts you've got. Tell everybody.
Yeah.
And that's quite a headache because getting the flyers takes a month overhead. And then, yeah, we do get a lot of response. So really, I think there's a lot of interest. It's just that the overhead for running these things is quite tough, which is why we only run 4. And there is a separate Linux event. Sometimes it's been helpful to plug in. There's a like Linux for education. It's called Fit on Linux, but it's basically Linux party. And so they invited us, and we were in the Linux party. And then people who came to see the Linux event could also come and do some Raspberry Pi stuff.
Okay, so a bit like what we've got here today. We've got the education
Yeah, that
innovation
kind of
show.
thing,
We've
yeah.
taken some space up within
Yeah.
that, and there's 2 reasons for people to be here. Yeah.
Exactly, and that
Yeah.
made the overhead. That makes the overhead a lot less because then they can rely on the overarching logistics people to just make sure the monitor's there. Then we can just show up the Raspberry Pis and circuit boards. Yeah, and I think more volunteers because there's so much more you can do with people if you've got more people. So we yeah, I know, but if you want to do Scratch, right, you can say, here's this nice Scratch program, and you get some children involved, and they code away, and they're happy, and you can leave them. Whereas if you say, okay, now here's an SPI ADC, now we're going to plug something in, then you probably have to stay with them. And so what you can do depends on how many volunteers you have.
Yep. Yep.
So let's just drill into that. So when I did the Harlow Jam, I think we had 5 volunteers, and as it happened, 2 of those volunteers worked for the centre. They were actually, meeting and greeting people. As it happened, you may remember on the day they also had a birthday party in because they do these science birthday parties, and we had this all planned. So there was a front desk, and people were going to turn up, and they were going to tick them off with their Eventbrite tickets and direct them to where to go. There's no formal start to it. It was quite a long jam. And what happened was the people that were at the front desk then got busy with the birthday party. So people didn't have name badges on, and we found them wandering around.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had to deal with that quite quickly. But I think it's 5 volunteers went down to 3, and we were run ragged basically. I mean, people like Michael and that were brilliant because they just turned up and set up and knew exactly what to do because they'd already been in a jam before. So how many volunteers have you tended to need? So Manchester is 50 attendees, roughly how many volunteers?
About 60 attendees. I don't distinguish anyone as a volunteer, but the community spirit of it just means that people help each other. It works really well for us. Daily is, for example, he comes most months and pays and and contributes, and he'll turn up and he'll have a project on, he'll be getting on with it, and then I'll see him later in the afternoon. He'll be helping somebody else learn about Linux or about Python.
Yeah.
There's half the attendees there are that kind of a bit they're able enough to be able to help the others. So it's there'll be somebody will perhaps approach me, a mother or a father, and say, oh, my son or daughter is he or she wants to work on this, and you can help them. And if I'm free, then I'll do that. If I'm running around after something else, I'll say, oh, Jack here, he's got a bit of experience with this. Could you Jack,
it's a signposting really. Yeah. What about you guys? How do you deal with that on the day? In your cam jam?
You have 200 attendees. I'm struggling to remember how many volunteers. We call them jam makers because we're sad.
I think we had something like 10. Yeah, sorry. I think there's something like 10 helpers, but then
there was like 15 last time. We almost had too many helpers.
But they're not all helping all the time. So we've got various things that we have for example, the PayPal kiosk. Because we have vendors, they don't all take they take cash, but don't all take cards. We have people who are looking after that for maybe an hour. That's their contribution. Others are helping out in the workshops. They do a couple of hours there, and that's their contribution. So they're not on all the time.
Okay.
So while we have 15 of them, they're free to then obviously do whatever they like the rest of the time. And we get people at the end when we're actually setting down who actually volunteer. They've had a great day and they want to help tidy up. So we have quite a few people at the
Oh,
end.
great.
Our get in and get out is epic.
Is it?
Yes.
Because we're at the Institute of Astronomy, and it's set. There's a foyer which is set out like a sort of like a coffee lounge, and we completely clear that and put tables out, and also at the same time we're sorting out another room to hold the kids' workshops in, and that's set out as a conference room. So we have to turn all the tables around and pull the pies out.
Set up 16 pies and monitors in there, which that takes quite an effort, because we start about the workshop's about 11 o'clock, so we get there about 9:30. First hour and a half is setting up the pies, getting them all ready, booted up, make sure they boot up. They don't always every time, even though they're checked every time. And then it's manic in the other room while the vendors are setting up, once we've got the tables out for them.
What we did the first time we were at the Institute, because I started out with I think it was a 30-person one, the next time was a 50-person one somewhere else, and then it mushroomed. What we do is we did a walkthrough of the day and basically found out where the holes were that we needed to fill with people to do the jobs. So I can recommend that method, sort of to work out, do you need people to help you set up? If so, make a rough guess of how many.
Yeah, the walkthrough we do is literally one of us sits there and closes our eyes and we walk in the front door. Imagine ourselves walking in the front door. What's happening? Where are the people? Where can I see things? Where can I see signs? Is there someone greeting me, ticking me off, that sort of thing? Am I being directed to where I want to go? And when I get there, what do I find? And that we find helps us to make sure we've got everything in place.
It's interesting because there's some patterns forming here, but there is definitely, there's like almost like small, medium, large, and huge. And normally the ones that Alan does, they're huge. And Alan has, I remember when we went to the York Raspberry Jam, and we had like this, like the Jamboree. He had 3 or 4 sessions all running in parallel, loads and loads of content. And actually, I really like the fact there's so much content on the go. One of the things I find about having lots of things going on in parallel is actually you miss things. You think, oh, I really wanted to see that person and also see that person. So just to say, there is a scale thing, and don't panic about the scale. So as Michael says, start small, maybe.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea, so the actual preparation that went into the Harlow Jam, and Harlow Jam was a really simple jam. It was literally turn up, sign in, I'll direct you somewhere, and then we had 2 or 3 people just making sure people weren't lost and they had something to do. I mean, hardly any preparation at all, because we had the centre, and the centre said they were going to give, okay, we lost the staff in the end of the day, but that they were going to sign people in. We just had to make sure we had, actually the most preparation for us was making sure we had enough people come in and showing something off. And there was that panic moment when we was looking at the names on the web, and we think, well, actually, the one piece of information we're missing here is who's coming to look and who's coming to show. If there is, I mean, there may not be that distinction, because you might just say what you really want to do is get a load of people in a room together and give them a reason to network. But actually, if you get 50 people that know nothing about the Raspberry Pi, it's going to be quite an interesting event.
All jams are different.
Yeah.
They're all in different styles. So my idea of, I ran the first one that ever happened, and my idea came from just having been going to user groups regularly. So mine was just, it's for people who haven't used this technology, just to come and use it and to share ideas. And so people brought their own pies. A lot of them brought their own monitors. We had to add a few in the space that we could use as well. But yeah, people would drive around and they'd bring a monitor with them. And that just worked for me. The size of the space, we didn't outgrow it. That we would sell out. The last few I think were actually hit the sell out each time. But it's not, you know, selling out in hours. It's you know, it's comfortable sized. You know, and some of them, you know, if you hear about all these things, like, you know, these guys have vendors, they have, you know, ambassadors and helpers, they have workshops, that have, you know, all these different things. You know, you could say all these different things that people have in jams, but you don't need to have all of these to run a
The
jam.
format is completely
You know,
up to you.
I know there's
definitely,
a new jam in where is it now? But I forget now. But they just phoned the library, the local library, and said, "Do you mind if we, you know, book that space in the library for half an hour on a Saturday morning?" And that's it. They just go and they put some robots on the thing, and that's what they call a jam.
Yeah.
You know, the word the term
Yeah.
raspberry jam.
Actually, I
isn't-
remember Carrie Ann saying, I think it was October half term last year. She ran something in a library and just got a load of people in and just, you know, said bring your Raspberry Pis along, and that worked. And that was
you know, there isn't a format in it. You know, it's not. There's no document that's, you know, that says this is a Raspberry Jam and you know you must adhere to these rules and have it. You know, it's whatever you want it to be and whatever suits you. It could be like that. This one is like the Cambridge one is a bit like a maker fair, so people actually sort of they do stuff at home and then bring it in. Meanwhile, there's workshops going on, which is great. Mine was just, you know, we set out tables and people, you know, worked on a project for the day and they collaborate. And you know, some of them are actually just workshops, so it's just a lesson almost. And yeah, it depends on your audience, depends on your space, depends on you as an organizer. You can do whatever you want, really. And, you know, some of them charge, some of them don't, some of them.
Yeah.
You know, some of them require an awful lot of organisations, and some of them really don't.
It's just getting a space, getting a date, getting the event out there that people want to go to. They'll just go to whatever's there. They just want someone to organise one, and it grows, it changes. We are making an effort with ours to. What we call a normal jam and a special jam is alternate. We don't do once a month like Ben, sorry, brain going there, organisers, because what we do is totally different. As a lot larger. We have the normal jam, which is fairly well with the vendors, the workshop, lectures, show and tell. But then we have our special ones. We've got one coming up in May, which we're concentrating on on getting teachers there with new curriculum, but also probably going to have about 6 different workshops going on making things. We're probably making it difficult for ourselves doing that.
Yeah, these guys
but
have a lot on their shoulders. Like, you know, Cambridge has a really big pie community, and it's kind of a big expectation of it being you know, a big jam, and
it has become that. But then if we weren't doing that, we would make a smaller jam.
Yeah.
50 people, 30.
The first one I did was 30 people in one room.
Yeah.
And we had a mixture of presentations, show and tell, and networking, and all we did was move tables about.
Yeah.
For different purposes.
I mean,
So,
monthly
yeah.
works for me. These guys do one every couple of months, you know, give or take. And I mean, there's a pie group that actually meets at the Cambridge Makespace. That you know, there's sort of the hack space. They meet every Monday. It's not a jam. They don't call it a jam, and they only have a couple of 2, 3, or 4 people going each week. But it's an evening of the week where you can go and work on a pie project. That's mostly for members, really, but that particular space. But
So
There's
the
a
that might work as a jam.
Yeah.
There's the Raspberry Pint that apparently happens up in
Yeah.
London. Haven't been to that, where a bunch of people go down to a pub.
Oh yes, I've been to Raspberry Pint. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally something you just say we're going to be here at this date, this time. Turn up, have a pint, and some people do bring along projects, and there's a limit to. I mean, you actually, you know, there are a few spare tables and things. People, you end up with little clusters of people where they're sort of talking about and you know, people bring their pies powered off batteries, and they're doing all sorts of bits and pieces, and people have a drink and a chat about something, and some of those turn into other things. You know, some of those might actually spawn off another jam or something, or it's just a couple of people collaborate on a project or something. It's probably the simplest format one that I've seen with Raspberry Pint.
What's the best way you find to promote a jam?
That was going to be my question, actually.
So
Thank
the
you
only
very
thing
much
I
for
needed to
asking
do was, you know, I ran the first one through Eventbrite, and then I had, you know, the Eventbrite gives you the email list. You know, you just go new event, you know, fill in the details, send to the list. and then everybody who's on your list just is told about the event, and it's sort of fairly organic from there. Apart from that, you know, it would be on the Spaces own website, showing, you know, in their events calendar, you know, word of mouth. People that go to things like that will find it eventually, or they'll look for one. I mean, I made a
meetup as an alternative.
I hate Meetup. I mean, to be honest, I hate Eventbrite, but you know,
Who
it's
doesn't?
the lesser of two evils. You know, you sign up to Meetup and you get a billion emails every day with all the. But what was I going to say?
Do you promote it through schools at all, or do you not go through?
Yeah, we do. We